Hello, fifth graders. Today, our big question is how can we estimate the sum of two fractions if we want to add two fractions together? So I have a word problem for you. Pretend I am welding together two copper pipes to repair a leak. One of these pipes is 5/12 of a foot, and the other pipe is 1/6 of a foot. Now, we're going to be learning how to add these fractions in upcoming lessons, but today we're going to learn a quick, fun way to determine a quick estimation for adding these fractions. So in your notebook, I want everyone to draw a number line, but this number line that we're going to draw is only going to have three numbers on it. Over here, we're going to have a 0. All the way over at the end here is going to be 1. Does anyone know what would fall right in between? Well, if you said 1/2, you are correct. Okay, then down here, we're going to draw a box. And underneath, we're going to put 0, 1/2, and 1. And another box with 0, 1/2, and 1. So let's just recall our two fractions we're thinking about is 5/12 and 1/6. So 5/12 we can put in the one box, and 1/6 we can put in the other box. Now, if we were looking at this number line, how can we tell what fraction is close to 1? Well, in a class last week, I put some sample fractions, and those sample fractions looked like this. And we talked about how all of these fractions are actually all equal or equivalent. They're all equal to 1. And a big part of that was because, remember, this fraction line is actually division. So when you see the division symbol that looks like this, that's really a fraction. So if we do 2 divided by 2, we get 1. If we do 3 divided by 3, we get 1. 6 divided by 6 is 1. So if we look at this first fraction here, 1/6, do you think that would fall in this category of being close to 6/6? Probably not. Now, if we look at 1/2, what over 6, so on your number line here, I want everyone to write 6/6 here, because we know that would equal 1. Right here, what is 1/2 of 6 needs to go up top here to make it equivalent to 1/2. So what's 1/2 of 6? 3. So the fraction 3/6 is equal to 1/2. And what fraction do you think is equal to 0/6? That would be 0/6. So our options are 0/6, 3/6, or 6/6. So let's go back to the original fraction of 1/6. Well, I would probably put that about right here, especially if I had 2/6 here. 2/6 right here. And 3/6 there, and then we would have 4/6 here, and probably 5/6 here. So now, by looking at where we placed 1/6, we can tell which of these benchmarks, 0, 1/2, or 1, is 1/6 closest to. Well, it looks like it's closest to 0. So right down in the box down here where you wrote 1/6, I want everyone to circle the 0. Okay, now 5/12. Where would 5/12 go? Well, let's get a eraser here, and we're going to write on top of this number line all of the same things. So let's start with the denominator of 5/12. When I say denominator, we're talking about the bottom number in the fraction. So we're going to write over the 0 something over 12. Then over 1/2, we're going to write something over 12. And then above the 1, something over 12. So I like to start with the 1 because I always know it's going to be the same number as the denominator. Then actually I like to come back to the 0 because I know this is always going to be 0. And that actually helps me determine the midpoint here, because what's between 0 and 12? 6. So there are our 3 equivalent benchmark fractions. So if we look at the 5/12, well, I'm probably going to put 5/12 somewhere in this zone here. So we know it's closest to 1/2. Now we have 1/2 plus 0 equals 1/2. So we can do a quick estimation and say that 5/12 plus 1/6 equals 1/2. So make sure in your notebook you have this written out. 5/12 plus 1/6 is about 1/2. And even underneath we can write 1, that's about 1/2 plus about 0 would give us 1/2. Which means the welded pipes will be closer to 1/2 foot than 1 foot or 0 feet. Now, what if would we get this same estimation of 1/2 of a foot if the copper pipes measured, instead of 5/12 and 1/6, what if they measured 2/6 and 7/12? Well, looking at 2/6, I can still say, okay, well, 2/6 is tricky, right? Because we have on our number line here, we have our 3 benchmark fractions we're going to be looking at, 0, 1/2, and 1, or 3 benchmark numbers. And I know that here is going to be 0/6. I know that above the 1 is going to be 6/6. And I know in the middle is going to be 3/6. So 2/6, if this is 1/6 and 2/6, 4/6 and 5/6, I know that 2/6 would land here, which is actually closer to 1/2. And then 7/12, I know that 1/2 of 12 is 6. So 7/12 is going to be about here, which will also be here. So that means I would now have 1/2 plus 1/2, which equals a whole. So if my 2 copper pipes were 2/6 and 7/12, I could say that that would be closer to 1 whole foot. Now to practice real quick, I'm going to write a fraction down, and as soon as you see the fraction, I want you to think to yourself, okay, what would it be? What would this fraction be as 1 whole? What would that fraction be as 1/2? And what would that fraction be as a 0? And then try to determine if it's close to 0, 1/2, or a whole. Now, if you want to, before we start the game, if you want to draw your number line with our 3 options. Okay, here comes the first one. 11/12 is close to, make your guess. Okay, if you said, well, I know 0/12 would fall under 0. I know that 1 would be 12/12. So this would be 0/12. This would be 12/12. And then this one, you just do half the denominator. So what's half of 12? 6. So 11/12 would definitely be close to 1. All right, now we're going to go a little bit quicker. 1/6. What do you think? It is close to 0, because 0/6 versus 3/6. This is closer to the 0. All right, last one. Let's try 5/8. What's your guess? Well, if you said 1/2, you are correct. If we think about 8, what's half of 8? 4. So 4/8 would be equal to 1/2. So 5/8 is very close. If you're watching this video on Edpuzzle, the quiz is about to pop up. So make sure that you go back and rewatch anything. If you have any confusion, write it down so Mr. Pizza can work with you one-on-one. And good luck with the quiz.